year plus out from the first interaction, first day on the job, first video shoot. And, my goal here is to just tell the story. I want to go back to like the three of us, what we learned getting out of the military. Mac, you were on a jump and you got hurt.
Yes.
Right, okay.
I thought I was taking care of myself, getting that checked out, figuring out what was going on, when in reality I was building a case against me. That turned into training rotations, all the exercises we do, everything. And the more I would push to go through it, the worse it got. And it got to the point that I got pulled for being a liability. And then it was basically at 8 months, sit there and go to appointments.
Did you have a moment where you realized, in your head, you're like, okay, this is not what I signed up for?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. I was completely derailed from everything I aspired to do and had been trained to do, and basically shelved and left there.
Did you have a reason to have a backup plan?
No.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, the military was kind of a backup plan.
Fair enough, yeah. I mean, one thing you said last night that really stuck with me is this idea that you feel punished for trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And so, do you have a specific memory?
I distinctly remember we had our joint multinational training exercise in Hohensfels, and it's all these different countries come together and participate. And I was told that I'd just gotten some MRI results back, and they were like, okay, this is more than we initially thought. And I was told that I couldn't participate on profile, so I was like, terminate the profile, like I'm not going to anything else or doing anything about it. And then after that, I went back in, and that's when the next rotation came. And I was off profile, but I got pulled because somebody somewhere was looking for me.
Interesting. Okay. What do you remember about the first 6 months from finding out that you're leaving and then making the exit and landing?
The biggest thing I remember is there was no finite moment that I found out I was leaving. It was like this slow creep in my own head. I felt like I was right where I was supposed to be, doing right what I was supposed to do. And then, I got a little bit banged up, doing exactly what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And instead of me getting home from war and getting my wounds treated and immediately starting the process of how do I get back to being a warfighter? 5 minutes ago, I was a warfighter. I knew in my head what I needed to do to get back to being the guy I was right before I got shot, right? And I found myself in this hamster wheel of paperwork, and you don't know what's best for you, and this soldier, he needs this and that and the other. And so for me, it wasn't like this moment I knew I was getting out. It was this slow burn, whoa, this is not what I thought it was. At least in the context I found myself, right? So I think the first 6 months was a lot more about me struggling with that, being very frustrated, my family being frustrated, and finding myself in a situation where I was equally as passionate about what I was doing and saw the same and big horizons for the impact I could have, and realized this is something else I can do. This is something else that can handle my sort of ferocity and intensity, and something I can really dive into that wasn't what I thought I was going to be doing.
And you grew up in the trades though. So
yes.
So you already had in the back of your mind, I remember you told me a story of your dad putting you in the front end loader or something like that when you were just a little kid.
Yeah. I mean, one of the earliest memories I have was pinching my thumb in a skid steer. So I had this connectivity with this,
right,
which was unique. And I can certainly see how, had I not, I would have been in a really dark place, you know. So,
And I mean, you went back to picking up a shovel.
immediately,
And digging a
I
hole.
limped.
Yeah.
I had a cane the first day I went back to work, and I limped, you know, downstairs into a basement and shoveled 18 inches of dirt out of a orchestra pit. But I
So,
needed something
yeah.
to do, you know. Mentally, I needed something to do.
Right. So you went from Special Forces Detachment Commander to digging a ditch.
Yes, Joint Task Force, Ground Force Commander, like.
Yeah. Even. Yeah.
Which is even, and the only reason I say that is because like now, to contextualize that in this arena, like people don't really comprehend it.
Yeah.
But I think y'all can, like, and then, you know, less than 30 days later, like crutching down to the
Right.
to the bottom of a ditch and digging.
Well, I mean, the story I was always told growing up is, you know, what do you want to do with your life? Be a ditch digger,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's poetic.
It
in
is,
some
yeah.
sense.
I mean, because I think the right answer to the question is like, yeah, if I need to be,
Right.
you know, if I need to be a ditch
Yeah.
digger, like that's exactly what I'm
Right.
going to do. And at that time, for me, mentally and in turn for my family, like that's what I needed to do, because I needed something to do that didn't involve me sitting around thinking about how frustrated I was, and it just gave me a handhold, right, to start doing what I knew how to do, and that's climb out of whatever situation I
Right.
was in, you know.
And how many years ago was that?
It'll be 3 years in April. It's about 2.5 years ago.
And then where are you now?
So now I'm operations director or general superintendent for about $20 million worth of work.
Okay.
Building one of the biggest buildings going on in the city, and got crews and people and friends and junior leaders stretched across 3 states. Like, I just needed that handhold,
Yeah.
you know, to get for something to anchor on and something to pull against, you know. So yeah, it wasn't, there was no moment at the time. I didn't recognize the moment, but now I can look back and be like, okay, this is what was happening in my life that made this all possible, you know.
It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, yeah. Yours was kind of I guess the middle of the 3. Like you know, it was clear when you
Yeah.
came around that like
Yeah.
something was wrong and not getting better, right?
Yeah, I mean, to give them credit, the Army would have found someplace for me.
Sure.
Right.
Which is true of all 3 of us,
And
no doubt. you know.
Because they ask you at the word transition, they say like, you know, what do you want to do?
Right.
Is your goal to medically retire with the highest possible rating, or is your goal to stay in the service?
Right.
And unfortunately, I mean, the process, like, it doesn't really matter what the counselors and the nurse practitioner who's assigned your case and your social worker say to you. The system is kind of designed to steer you to ensure there's no stone unturned when it comes to, are you getting compensated to the maximum possible amount? And so like there's this real heavy emphasis on making sure that every T is crossed and I dotted,
Yeah.
to make sure that I got the sense it was like, you're not going to come back and complain about not being taken care of or write your congressman that, you know, the Army didn't take care of you. And I wasn't salty about it at the time. But a part of that is because I had a great support network and a lot of options in front of me. And I definitely noticed that being an officer with a college degree made me stand apart in that aspect. So like my transition was almost too slow, because like I knew I was getting out, I knew I had options, and then it was a matter of just completing all the paperwork and going through all the appointments and the processes that I had to you know, check all the blocks and make all the slides green. So that was my experience. And you know, one thing I harp on is I don't really blame the bureaucrats or the people behind the desk, because they're kind of just operating
Sure.
in the system as they know it, right? And they're all very well-meaning, but unfortunately today, like, being well-meaning has translated into how do we get the most money for your
Right.
disability as
Right.
possible, right? You know, that whole experience is like one of the reasons why I started this business. Because like, you know, I saw soldiers side by side in these appointments, and it just felt like their their potential was being constrained because, you know, the system was saying, like, you need to act broken. You need to present yourself as being less capable than you are, because that's how the system works and that's how you get paid.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was one part of the system that, like, really frustrated me. So that's kind of like why I started this business.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly experienced those same things, like just recognizing, like, oh, there are things I can say now and do now that would, quote unquote, benefit me. And it just, in no way, shape, or form was that what I was looking for or needed. Not that the people that were around me weren't or trying in the best way they could to take care of me. It wasn't necessarily the best capitalization of potential.
Right.
You know?
And like, I think there's more than just a financial cost to, you know, convincing somebody that they're broken. Like, it's the human dignity cost of convincing somebody that they're broken. And I mean, I don't know, Mac, to your credit, like, so we met through one of the guys that I served with, kind of mentored you coming up in the infantry, right?
Yes.
Right. So that was all I needed to know, right? And, you know, when we linked up, the story that I got from Tim was, you know, really good dude, really hard worker, struggling, right? And so what do you remember about how we connected? Why did you even agree to, you know, start working with me?
It's a 2-lane road there, because that's pretty well how Tim pitched
the
you.
network effect, right? Yeah.
Just from the first call, like, there wasn't any you saying, I'm trying to do this and I want to go here. You were already asking, like, you told me what you were doing, and then you wanted to know what I wanted.
Okay.
And I wasn't prepared for that, because I didn't have any of my stuff at the point to
I mean, yeah. We should drill down on that, though.
progress.
Because when we first started talking, you'd already been out for a couple of years, right? And so, like, you know, there are 45,000 veteran service organizations out there. There's billions of dollars being, you know, thrown at transitioning service members to make them more valuable, you know, or successful in civilian life. And what you're telling me is that was the first time anybody asked you what you wanted.
Pretty well, yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, like, the point of execution, and everything's got to support the point of execution, and the fact that, like, you know, in yours is a microcosm, all of ours are, but the fact that, you know, you were at that point, and at least to your knowledge, nobody had asked you that question, is just, you know, certainly indicative of the mark being missed, you know. And I think that kind of this whole thing we've been working on together is, like, there is an interpersonal aspect to all this that is so important, because you got to make sure those questions you get asked, and ask in such a way that's not like checking a block, but like digging in, even stubbornly sometimes, like, no, don't just give me the up and down. Like,
it's sticky human shit.
Yeah,
It's hard to define, no single right answer, you know.
I think a huge part of it for me too was I was very jaded on anything military related.
Yeah, same
after I got out, you know, like, it hurt to think about.
Right.
And you were not some guy pulling a 9-to-5 for some big faceless corporate entity, right? Like, you were some dude in his house, like, telling me, like, hey, I'm over here, but, like, what can we figure out? Like, what can we do? Like, what's the next move?
Do you want
and that was huge.
I'm good.
You're good.
Good right now.
So we start talking. I'm gonna try and set the stage, because I actually don't remember the specifics, but you were, like, in the final months or had just completed a trade school. And so, like, one of the things I was thinking about last night is, if you look on paper at Mac, okay, so separate from the military, spent like a year and a half, 2 years in Houston. Yeah, so you separate from the military, you go back home, basically, and you work in your family's business, and then you go to a trade school, right? Like, that's a success story on paper.
Sure.
You know, if we're just looking at this from the point of, you know, you weren't living on the street, right? or anything worse. But when we started talking, it was obvious that that was not the right place for you. Or there was like some struggles going on. So like, why don't you tell me about like what was your outlook on employment? How are you going to keep a roof over your head? What was going through your head at that time when we first started talking?
Well, mind you, I graduated, I think, the month that COVID was declared a pandemic.
Right.
So all of my career opportunities with the trade school I had attended pretty well went away overnight.
Right.
And from there, it was kind of, because, I mean, like you say, Tim connected me with you. He connected me with that trade school. When he got out, he was attending. And I knew it was a lucrative opportunity, but it wasn't anything I was passionate about. So when all of my avenues to employment through that went away, there really wasn't just a lot of motivation to delve, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
So you're stuck with a certification that you're not super excited about in a field that's not hiring.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like the worst possible scenario. Okay.
What did I just do for a year?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so you ask yourself, what did I just do for that year? What weight did that question have at that time, right? Like where you were in life, like, were you still able to be somewhat ambivalent, like, all right, what am I going to do as sort of a chuckle, or was it starting to set in like, all right, I need to figure something out?
Both.
Both?
Both. Like a desperate laugh, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, with the whole uncertainty of the COVID thing, it was like you wasn't sure where anything was going. Everyone was going crazy. But I knew I could do more. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, even in going through the trade school, I wasn't necessarily satisfied with the career path I would be on.
You said something last night. It would have felt weird for you, and I'm paraphrasing, like you felt like, and I've heard this from you a couple times, like it feels weird to inspect a welder's work if you don't know how to weld.
Exactly. I mean,
right. And I think Ben and I could probably like spin some. There is a logic, a way to reason through that, which is like you have a unique skill and it's specialized, and in some sense, like your ability to weld has no bearing on your ability to run this, diagnostic equipment. But I think there's something more primal there, which is like you want it to feel useful, like you wanted to have a skill.
Well, yeah, we talked a lot about like purpose,
right?
And I think that purpose like is one of those weird things. Like we have a tendency to like just over romanticize things, like that purpose will be so clear all the time.
Right.
Like last night we were talking, how do you extrapolate from like, all right, I'm doing this one small thing that needs to get done. In and of itself, like the need for it to get done is maybe somewhat clear, but as you understand like a purpose, like I'm trying to take care of these people. These people I work with are my family, or I'm taking care of a family. Like that purpose becomes clear, no matter how menial the task is. And like, when you have that, it makes the little things, in some sense, matter less, but at the same time matter a whole lot more, right? Like, and that's, I feel like what's been valuable about all of this is like the challenges become worth it because there is something else you're working towards. You know what I mean?
Purpose is going to be a major thread that we pull on this whole conversation. But right now, my mind is going to that first meeting that we had, and the conversation. Like even before I thought Ben was like a good option, or even knew that Ben was an option. Like, what do you remember about the first couple months of us working together?
It was just fairly introductory.
Yeah.
At first. But then it turned into more, where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Do you have any sort of plan for this? Do you know how to go about, formulating like pen to paper, and then like where do you start with all of that once you've got it?
And this is like all once a week, Zoom calls or phone calls, right? Right. So it's nothing fancy. It's like a touch point every 4 times a month, right?
No, like sit in the backyard, drink a beer, and
Do you have any of that, like
recorded?
Yeah.
No. I mean,
that's probably good.
Well, there's this like, in our age of tech and startups and rapid growth businesses, there's this idea that it's all about iteration. You gotta try something, learn from that, and then try the next version until you get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that really feels like what we did. And so we started the job search with you on Indeed and all of the other easily accessible online job search platforms. And to my recollection, you submitted a lot of resumes and none of it.
I did.
I mean, did you get a response from anybody?
I got turned down by one person.
Yeah.
And I got 2 calls while I was moving here
Okay.
about, I think,
That's like months
being an
after
electrician.
you.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it was at least 5 months after I'd applied.
And like time, you were on a clock. Like there was a
yeah.
finite amount of money in your bank,
Mm-hmm.
and you were on a clock, right?
Well, I was utilizing my GI Bill to attend the trade school.
That's right, yeah,
so
yeah.
when the trade school ended and there was no job,
Right. Right.
I mean, we were to the point that O'Reilly's turned me down.
Right.
So
Retail store.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know how COVID's gonna go.
Mhm.
Okay, so at some point I'm able to connect you two.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, like, what do you remember from that first interaction? Like, do you even remember what we talked about before that? Like, hey, I got a guy.
No, I'm trying to remember like that conversation. Like, hey, I've got a guy.
Right.
Because
We've been working together for a while.
we've been working together for a while. Knew that hey, I had a need, that we felt like there was a huge gap
Right.
in the industry. I mean, I think the conversation was simple as like, hey, I think I've got a guy that would fit, and then my response was as simple as like, well, hey, I want to talk to him.
Right.
And it was probably
Is he breathing oxygen?
yeah, it was probably
Yeah.
no more than 2 or 3 phone calls
Right.
before, hey, we're trying to get Mac
Yeah.
dates to get down to Charleston and see what's going on. And
When we started working together, I don't even remember how that started, but we started talking about how are we going to solve the skilled labor shortage, right?
yeah, so it was something that has probably always resonated with me, that this is a valuable and honorable industry or trade to be in. And for some reason, people don't want to do it. And I
Well,
think,
your initials are on like 2 of the buildings surrounding this,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
we're sitting right now, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's
like you
kind of
can
cool.
turn 360, and these are things that I built or as a part of a team that built, right?
Right.
It's what my family's done for at least 3 generations, and I just look around and say, hey, if people don't learn to do this and do it well, like, we're gonna have a big problem. And in the same breath, like, if people learn to do it well, they can get compensated very well for it.
Right.
And so, part of needing some purpose and needing somewhere to put the energy I had before, it's like, hey, I need to get young guys involved with this and help be a part of raising them the way I was raised in it, so that we have a viable future in the trades. And so you and I talked about that, and I knew that you were interested in it, that I was certainly interested in it, and the timing had just worked out.
And I was breathing oxygen.
And you were breathing
the oxygen, and 2 or 3 phone calls later, and Max sitting in the front seat of my truck, and we're riding around
Right.
looking at the buildings
Yeah.
we're talking about. And I don't even really remember those conversations. I do remember what you talked about last night. I said, hey, ask me whatever question you have. Like, this is what we do.
Right.
Just send it. And because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I just knew that.
You'd never had somebody, a young veteran eager to learn, hand delivered to your doorstep, basically.
No,
that doesn't happen. You're saying that doesn't happen all the time.
Certainly not. Like, I didn't. Yeah, I just was trying to take advantage of the opportunity as best I could, because I knew we needed the industry needs people to come jump in feet first. And so I remember thinking, like, all right, like, I think prior to that, I sent you like a couple YouTube videos, like, hey, can you build a set of sawhorses watching this video? And I got some pictures back from Mac, and he was able to do it. I was like, right, this is as good as it gets right here, like.
Ben and I did not set up a plan to test applicants with YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even think you asked him to build them. I think you just said like here's
He recommended it
yeah.
was that in a stairway.
Yeah.
Just like a
It was like a
two-
stairway.
That's like when I was younger,
Right.
and you came and said, "Hey, I'm a carpenter." Somebody would say, "Okay, well, build me a set of sawhorses and a set of steps."
right.
So the only way I knew to like interview him virtually was like, "Here's a YouTube video. Let's see what you got."
What are you gonna do
know?
with it?
And
Right.
then next thing you know,
And you had to borrow tools. You had to
I used my old man stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and let me ask you this: if Mac had come to you and said, "Here's my paper resume," what would that have meant to you?
I don't want to say nothing because
Right.
there's an extraordinary amount of value
Yeah.
in being able to bridge some of the gaps between
Written communication.
written communications. Is huge, and understand that quality matters when it comes to that sort of thing. But it would have been very empty.
Right.
It would have been easy to look right through it, but the fact that resume was more or less like stapled to some work put in place, that has it meant something.
Where
Still
are
means
all the
something.
sawhorses right now?
That's like a really eloquent way of saying like, send me a picture of your hands. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Right.
how hard are you willing to get out and work?
Where are the sawhorses right now?
I give them to my mom.
Nice.
Yep.
See, just can't you can't find
That's
find
right.
good help. So y'all are connected now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like August, September timeframe. You make the trip out here on your own accord. You're footing the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you do that? I mean, like that's a huge risk. Like, why would you drive from Oklahoma to Charleston to
Well, I mean, in my mind, both of you guys were taking just as big a risk. I mean, you're trying to start this entire company and you're banking on me. And then, you're over here like really trying to get stuff done. I have no concept of what's going on,
Yeah.
but you're all the way over here like willing
right?
to
Because you didn't know anything about concrete before. showing up.
nothing.
Right.
I've walked on it. That was about the extent of it.
Right.
But, just receive and then put me up and show me around, like that's a lot, because even in the military, when I showed up to my first duty station, it was in Italy. I had no sponsor, so
Yeah.
I was flying blind. But
Right.
to have like somebody here, like waiting and willing
Right.
to just kind of like, this is where it is, this is kind of what it is. What do you think? What do you want to know?
Right.
That was a lot for me,
I mean, he ate dinner at your house, right? Like
Mhm.
yeah.
We had meatloaf. He brought a bottle
was
of red
one
wine,
Nice.
and
I had
so
no
we
idea
didn't.
what to do.
Bev made
Yeah.
meatloaf last night. She's like, "Well, Matt can't eat the same thing twice in the house." So,
Right.
That's actually what got me here. Was
That was
the
old
meatloaf.
school.
yeah,
Did you feel a kinship with him, with Mac, just being a veteran?
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, especially coming from the infantry, like
Yeah.
that. I think that goes a very long way.
That's what I love about the entire like veteran network. You know what I mean? Because eBay functions on the principle of like, I won't screw you if you don't screw me, right? But like the veteran network is like, you tell me you're a veteran, and if you mess that up, you're almost not, in a way. You know what I mean? Like if you don't stick to your guns, like tell the truth, work hard. It's the integrity. Like everything that goes along with it, because when you say that and you've served with those people, like it paints a picture. So when someone else claims that, even if you've never met them, there's backstory now, right?
You mentioned like John talking about a business. Well, at that time you were just like, hey, I'm in grad school. I'm supposed to be doing something. I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. I feel like there's something here, and it was much more of a project or an idea than it was.
I mean, I think it boils down to the idea that I don't want to live in a world where someone like Mac isn't making his environment better, or making people around him better, because I know what he's capable of. For every reason you could list of why Mac isn't making good money, going home every day with satisfied that he made the world better. That's on us.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's something that we have control over. And so that all of the business side of how does this make money, and that's a big one, but like all of the considerations of how do you turn this into a viable business, I think were secondary to the idea of like, no, there's a bigger problem here, which is you got 150,000 max that leave the military each year. Like, what does it say about us if we're not collaborating with them productively?
Right. That's what I'm saying is like, especially at that time, like there was not much in place other than like you knew
I was in my
something.
office. I was in my office.
Yeah.
Yeah, my home office with a laptop, camera, and that's it.
Yeah, and just knew you needed to do something. And
Yeah.
this seemed like the best place to start for
Right.
for all of us, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember when the first 2 jobs that John ever pitched me, it was doing tile or this.
Yeah.
And we'd been talking for a
Right.
minute, but I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not trying to move to, I forget if it was somewhere like up north. And
It was Virginia, yeah.
yeah. But it was that or this. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to move that far and do anything crazy. But as time went on, no jobs came up. And then it was like kind of almost a lesser of 2 evils thing. But then he got me on the horn with you and like we spoke. And it's like, okay, this dude seems steady. So if he's steady, I'm in. And I came down here
Yeah.
and like.
I mean, to be fair, we did look in Oklahoma. Like, we looked.
Oh, we did. We did.
We definitely tried.
If you were able to like hop on a plane, fly back to that guy in Oklahoma, and be like, "Hey man, like this is what a day is like," what would you say to yourself?
I'd probably be in, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, but what would you say to yourself? Like you'd be in, but
to try and get me here,
no, just to be like, "Hey man, this is what you're signing up for."
worth it, I guess. Like
Okay.
if everything works out and it sounds feasible and it doesn't sound boring, I'll probably give it a try. You know what I mean? So,
You had boring options in Oklahoma.
but at the time, I had a couple reasons to remain
Right.
around Tulsa.
Sure.
But I had 2 very good veteran friends there, still do.
Right.
As far as I know, they're there. But I don't know. It was close to home, not too far from Texas.
Right.
So, also just monetarily, I didn't know that I could pull off like a state change.
Right. Well, I think that was a good segue into your first day. Because I had my first exposure to what you really do on a day-to-day basis at the site right around the corner. And to me, it was overwhelming. It was loud. There's a lot of material. There's shit everywhere.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody is actively working on multiple, levels, and I was trying to imagine myself in your shoes on your first day, and the first thing that came to my mind is it's a miracle he still shows up. So like, why don't you tell me, what was going through your head that first day?
Well, I knew I had to do good, right? I mean, I showed up and it was, hey, this is who you report to. And,
Yeah, you had some pressure on you.
And then I was flying blind again, right?
Right.
And this guy doesn't know me from Adam, so he tells me pick up trash, which is like a huge part of what we do. Like
Right.
you've got to maintain order and everything, but
Okay.
it's also one of the not demeaning but least skilled things you could possibly be doing, right?
Okay.
But that also means that if you can take that and do it well, they can use you, right? So, I mean, I picked up all the trash
Yeah.
on that entire job site. I got called out like halfway through and told that the company I was with was not even working in an area I was picking up trash in. And I
Right.
was told,
So you met Jack yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Jack's our
Yeah.
project engineer. He was working with a different company at the time and called me. He said, "Hey, this kid picks up trash like it matters," which is like maybe the best feedback you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, last night, you had a pretty clear message about your like first couple
Yeah.
days on the job.
it was very hit the ground running,
It was tough.
When I finished picking up trash, I couldn't find my supervisor again. So it was, okay, like, what are these guys doing? I just saw guys assembling shoring, and it's 2 pieces. You bolt them together, and then you put them over here. So I start getting the 2 pieces, and putting them together so he can bolt them.
Yeah.
And then he walked off and left the drill, and I'm just like, okay. So I keep making them. Somebody comes to get some. I'm like, how many of these do we need? They're like, whatever quantity. I'm like, okay, 5 more. So I make 5 more. They come to get them. There's 3 left. I pick up the last 3 and follow that guy, and just keep it moving.
I don't know, man. Like last night, you said straight up, like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. No,
it sucked.
It was insane.
It was tough.
just the op tempo they work under. It was
Right.
it was frantic almost, because all these guys are doing all this stuff that's completely alien to me. I'm in a new environment.
You've never done this before.
No.
I mean, like you've
no.
never even been on did you ever work construction?
No, I mean I've hammered nails, but that
Right.
means nothing until how you nail something matters.
Well,
right?
you said something else last night that I thought was awesome. You're like, every man in America thinks that,
every
like,
dude
oh, I know
thinks
how
they
to.
can like swing a hammer and
Yeah.
dig a hole, like whatever. It's like rudimentary tools, right? And it's absolutely not the
But
case.
then when it becomes like you got to do it,
Yep. I mean,
well and for time.
you have a guy asking you for 2x4, and he needs a 2-foot piece, and you hand it to him, and he throws it over his shoulder and tells someone else he needs a 2x4. Like you stop and think about yourself for a minute, like
Right. I mean, it's high stakes, high pressure, physically tough, outside, and so as kind of the middleman here, like the thing that gets me every time is, I mean, just write it down on paper. Like you had a young veteran who couldn't find a job, moved halfway across the country and started doing one of the toughest jobs there is. And he stuck with it. And so like part of the thing I'm trying to do with this conversation is like figure out why. You know?
One thing, Mac, I think
because it kept getting worse, and I was just fascinated by it.
You're
Yeah.
like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, just kind of like
well, one thing I want to maybe dig in on right there is like so it was stressful, frantic, but like how, now that you have seen a few things, like how good of care were those guys taking of you?
Oh well, in a way, yeah, but also none at all.
Right.
Because if I was gone the next day, they would have never known the difference, right?
Right.
Because I wasn't valuable.
But they only need to see a couple things from you to realize, like, all right, this guy's worth me investing even a minute of my day to like help him understand what he's doing.
and you have an experienced crew, right?
Yes.
And so like the average person on your crew has been doing this for a long time. Probably weren't born in America.
Yeah.
And like their benchmark for what hard, tough life is
It's very high.
very high, right?
And they're the first thing they're weeding out is like, again, is this somebody that I'm willing to give even a second of my time to help
right.
learn to do this?
Well, because every second they're not doing work is a liability to
Yeah.
them.
Are they going to be there when I need them?
Right.
And so like their 30-second evaluation in that the first day you were there, of like, okay, this is a guy that like I'm willing to even take 5 seconds and say, do it like this. That was worth it to them, which is tremendous. And I think you could probably look at it now and say, even more so how important that is,
Yeah.
So like from that first day, we had weekly meetings, give or take, the three of us. And we talk about everything from your financial situation to like basically whatever was on top of your mind, right? I don't know. What's your impression of that?
That something essential for me too, though, was Outlaws Inc. provided a separate financial weekly meeting from the job one.
Right.
So there was one to make sure that everything was going well. I was still employed,
Right.
and all that was handled. And then there was another one for what is that doing for me
Right.
now.
Did you ever think about quitting?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's always, like, what's the easiest thing you could do at any job is quit, right? And I mean, there's days that, of course, you could probably go make more money doing less anywhere, but you look around you and you see these guys, and like if you walk, like they're still here doing it. Like I'll go be somewhere air conditioned, like typing, and I know they're still out here, you know, doing what they do. And
I mean, it sounds like the Army to me. It sounds
in
like
a lot
it's,
of ways, like it's as tight a relationship, as close to a family as you can possibly have. It's like I tell you all the time, like nobody's coming to save you. There's no day where, like, you know, people that work in a bank are gonna be like, I'm gonna walk outside and help this guy out. Like, this is hard. It is hard, and people are afraid of hard work, and they, and as a defense mechanism, they look down their nose at it, and you know, like you build a relationship with the people you're doing it with, because you recognize that, like, if any one of us has a bad day today or doesn't show up, like, it just got harder on somebody else. And so, like, you know, when somebody calls in and says they're sick, like, I know, like, they cannot make it today. This is not somebody trying to get off or get by because the pressure from everybody else, because of the responsibility they feel to everybody else, is just tremendous. You know, and I think you've recognized that over time, like, and so it is like that familiar relationship you have in a fire team or a squad, you know.
Yeah, you lose one man and you feel it the rest of the time, like, because all that weight is still carried.
right.
You know, and I'm like, you're not gonna leave anything. You still need it. So
what was the worst? What was like your lowest point?
I had a week that I was doing a job, and it was the first time that Ben sent me out there, and he told me there were 3 guys, get out there, link up with them, this is your job. And it was literally just backfill, which is you made a hole, now you need to put the dirt back in it. But of course, you know, there's more technicalities to that, and I had never conducted any work on my own at that point. Like, this was my first step into, hey guys, I know the plan, this is what we need to do.
Leadership.
And
it's your first time having a leadership role. Yeah.
And it from the construction standpoint, yeah,
Right,
very
yeah.
much so. I mean, and I had, the job site was a nightmare. The weather was against us, like, the entire week we were out there, and it was just very, very frustrating that it took as long as it did to get it done. It was when we were backfilling the footers in Mount Pleasant. And it should have been a 2-3 day task, like, maximum. But, you know, every day we come back and we've got to pump water out of everything, and you have nowhere to put it, right? Because your job site is like this, you've got 4 holes. Like, where are you going to put all this water you got? Just simple things like that now it's really easy to work around, or you know what to do. But at the time, it was like, seemed like a way bigger deal.
The biggest thing that's valuable to me about something like that is, like, you didn't know what to do, but you knew how to, like, just keep pecking away at it until you broke through, you know. And that is so valuable, because so many people, when something goes wrong or just simply isn't going their way, you know, they just drop back and cross their arms and say, well, this isn't my responsibility, or somebody else should be here to do this. And so few people just know what it's like to just keep hammering until you get, you know, to the other side. And it's almost, it's heavy for me, man, because I know what it's like to be in that moment. And if you sometimes, like, those relationships you're building, and sometimes you're in those positions where things aren't going well. And if you just keep pecking away, then the people that you built those relationships with will show up when you need them the most, you know. And there's just so few people understand what it's like to be trying to get something done, you know. And like I said, because people are forgetting about what we do every day, and so it's
Almost as soon as we're out of there, you know. I mean,
yeah.
You spit on it. That's literally, like, we spend months making that, and then that's what goes on.
That's a good point. And not only, like, from interpersonal standpoint, do people forget about it? Like society is forgotten about it, or does not value it.
Well, they just
like it should.
assume that it's going to happen.
Right, and that it's easy,
Right,
and that
yeah.
you should just be able to, so all of that creates like this sort of brotherhood of like, man, you got to have a lot of respect for people that do what we do, whether or not you know them personally or not.
Right. Best week.
This week.
Yeah.
But I did spend one out at we were just making like almost a farmhouse, and it was just in the middle of scenic nowhere, and it was just incredible it wasn't like going to work. I mean, like the weather was great, the site was good, but I mean, we were just left to our own devices, and we got it done. Like everything went well, and it was a good time.
A year out, looking back, you're a different human being. I mean, the way that you present yourself, your outlook on the future, right? And you told me a story about going down and working on a farm over the holiday that I thought was really telling. What was that?
Well, I went down with my girlfriend to Florida to meet her family.
Yeah.
And her father has a pig farm. So I spent as much of the holiday as I could doing farm work because, well, it was just a great time to me. I enjoyed it. But just stuff I've picked up here in the sense of like not necessarily knowing what is going on or why, but you just watch the steps and practice the sequence, and you can apply it to just about anything. Like I could go anywhere, and if there's somebody that knows what they're doing, I know not necessarily how to do the job, but how to work, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, that makes complete sense to me. I mean,
Because there was it's so different from the military in the sense that the military is so like structured, and there's your TMs and all your,
it's literally listed
chain
for
of
you,
command.
right,
Yeah, everything is so like when you practice it, at least by the book and ordered. And out here, it's you can do one building one way, but the next one may need to be backwards just because of material demand, supply, weather. Like there's any number of things that could go on to affect how you need to get the job done, right? So just being able to adapt and overcome in any environment is like still a huge part of what we do, and I love that.
I mean, the words you used when you first told me about it is you felt useful.
Very much so.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. And the other thing
It was
too
weird.
is like
It was new.
is like I don't want to discredit at all like what you know how to do now, right? Like we had a frustrating couple months, I'd say, where I was trying to get you to see what you knew how to do, right? Because I think you had in your mind like this very organized and alphabetized way of learning something, which is what the military has industrialized, and it's valuable, but it's a little more dynamic here, and you were having trouble, you were frustrated with like, I'm not learning anything, but you were able to sit down and look at a list of things that you were supposed to be able to do, that you knew how to do, that not only did you know how to do, but you were to take that skill and boil it down to a principle, and then evaluate another problem set and apply that principle and accomplish the task. And like, I think we were talking last night, like when you were most frustrated, or where you feel like you're at now, like where I'm trying to coach or mentor you, is that I recognize whether you do or not right now, that you're actually much further beyond where you realize you are in terms of competency, and we just got to build that competence. But like you are useful, tremendously useful, and not that you weren't useful when you got here, but like it's just these little things that you put in your toolbox every day that make all the difference in the world. you know.
It adds up.
Which,
So, yeah.
not the least of which is attitude and willingness, you know.
I think that's as good a point as any to wrap up. And, you know, Mac, I always struggle with, you know, am I doing my best to solve the problem, and in a way that's, you know, centered on you, right? And so my loyalty has always been to finding the best path for you, and hopefully I've always done that. And I hope you've had the good, you know, same good experience working with me as I have with you. I hope that the next year goes smoothly, and I hope that we're able to continue to, you know, fill that need in your life for guidance and like, you know, re-entering the workforce and continuing on the path of success that you're on. So thanks for that. I just wanted to let you know. I guess I'll leave the last word to the two of you. Somewhere out there is a veteran or a transitioning service member who may be considering doing this. So what do you want them to know?
Well, I just want to echo, like, this is definitely a success,
Yeah.
right? You know, and like you said, like, I'm so thankful for all of this, what both of y'all have done, where I think it's going to go, and what people need to hear is there's tremendous opportunity, and it just starts with taking a chance and being willing to get after it.
I, for my part, would wholeheartedly recommend Outlaws Inc., John Miller, to anybody, just because it was such a turning point that I guess just things went well, and all it took was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was weekly conversations, like a genuine concern for the things that you cared about, and some element of coordination between the three of us. I mean, that was kind of the magic ingredient, right?
Yeah.
I don't have any special knowledge about Charleston labor market. You know, you're in the business every single day. Like, this was very much a basic human interaction, I think.
Yeah, at its core, it was
Right.
just that simple, and some trust and
Yeah.
a leap of faith and a little bit of spit and sweat here and there, and
Right.
and here we are. You know, like it is just that simple.
Well, it's like you say about shovel work. Like a wise man once told me, shovel work is just labor. Like, it's nothing else. But if you can do that good, you can do anything good. And there's a very real mentality of, I can't see it from my house. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here for whatever amount of hours, and then I go home, and then it's tomorrow's problem. But that was never the mentality of Outlaws Inc., and it's never been the mentality of where I've wound up. And that has only ever done great things for me.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I can't think of a better place
Yeah,
to stop.
that's a good way to end it. That's right.
So thanks for coming out, guys.
Yeah, thank you.